good morning and welcome to the 5th Pimento Business Development Club of 2023. If you don't already know me, I'm Paddy Woods. I'm the director of Pimento Fuse, which is a new business consultancy, and our aim is to help marketing agencies across operations, marketing and new business, including lead generation, to help them achieve their business growth. I apologise if I do disappear. My internet's been really patchy. We had a Vodafone outage this morning, so it's just come back online. So if I disappear, Simon, who is a partner director at Pimento, will take over. So apologies if I do disappear. I will dial back in on my phone once if everything gets sorted. Now, if you haven't been on previous calls, please use the chat box to ask questions, and I'll look to bring you into the call. My aim is to sort of do 35 minutes of just chatting with Tina and Adrian to get their perspectives of the world of sort of agencies, marketing, and sort of challenges they face, and then open it up to the floor, and I'll look to bring you in as well. So as I said, today's session is a really unique opportunity to find out more about the world of clients and procurement, the challenges they're facing and what they can see coming through in 2024. To help me with this, I have two fantastic panelists. I have Tina Fegent, who, if you don't know, is a fantastic procurement consultant. And I also have Adrian Mooney, who is a consultant marketing director at Hovis. I'm not going to introduce them. I'm just going to let them do a 60-second bio into themselves, and then we can get started. So Tina, do you want to go first?
Thanks, Patty, and hi everyone. Nice to see a few familiar faces, and thanks to Adrian for joining as well. 30 years experience in marketing procurement. I'm the first to do it. Set up teams at Orange, I think now Orange, Telecom, Beecham, and Cellnet. And then I worked for Gray and Lowe, worked for 2 ad agencies, and then for the last 18 years, run my own consultancy. I'm working for fabulous brands like Scholl and Hovis, for Rocher, innocent drinks. It's not all food. And yeah, so sort of been doing that. I chair the SIP, the purchasing body on marketing procurement, and I'm also a co-chair of the Get Shit Done board for the Conscious Advertising Network. So I'm a big advocate about trying to speak about procurement in a positive light. We know there's always two sides of a story, but I'd like to get out there and talk about benefits of working with procurement. So thanks, Paddy, for inviting me today.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Tina. And Adrian.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and thanks also, Paddy, for the invite. Delighted to be here. I'm Adrian. I've been in the game probably about as long as Tina, actually, 30 years. I'm probably one of the last great generalists in marketing, in terms of soup to nuts around everything from idea generation through to comms, through to strat planning. I've kind of done it all, and I guess there's not so many people that do that now. Been around for 25 plus years, worked across UK, EMEA, global, worked for challengers, #1 brands, ran my own startup for a couple of years in the 2010s, and worked for VC-owned businesses as well. I've been involved in great brands like Heinz in food, health and wellbeing, working with Tina with Scholl, taking it away from a dusty, kind of chemist brand into making people realise feet are really important. They only kind of tend to realise they're important when they break down. Within exercise, where my startup was and experiences, and within beer as well. In the last couple of roles, I've worked quite closely with private equity, and they're all different, those companies, but the working with agencies and with private equity is a bit of an art and a bit of a learning. So if I can today, I'll definitely give you a bit of insight into how those things work, because it's becoming more prevalent. But really great to be here, and thanks again, Paddy.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Tina. And thank you both for being here. It's really kind of you to give us your time. So we're going to get started, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions to come. I've just actually asked that question in the chat, so please do provide questions. Adrian, I'm going to start with you. We know that the market is volatile, the economy's tanking, and sort of there's lots of challenges clients are facing. From your perspective, and actually from the horse's mouth, what do you see as the challenges and the key challenges you're facing at the moment, and predictions of challenges you're going to face sort of coming up?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, through my kind of consulting work and interim roles, I've probably worked for 4 or 5 businesses pre and post pandemic. And what's quite clear from all of those 4 or 5 businesses across, beer, foot care, bread, etc., etc. The P&L is really, really important, and that's probably not the message that everybody wants to hear, but that's the discussion that happens, in the head offices around how we start to grow. There's been such a squeeze in so many ways around cost of living. In bread, for example, WeTRAIN and grain. Also, if you've got 9 big bakeries at Hovis working 24 hours, it's been quite a hefty energy bill. So those things are kind of real, and it makes it more challenging to really do some of the added value. It's a bit different in other businesses. So the Scholl business before that, it's a slightly different model. It doesn't have any factories, but shipping from China, that hit them. So there's no immediate escape for all businesses, whether they're got lots of factories in the UK or shipping from China. Everybody has had that, and I think justifying exactly what you can do with the money that's available for marketing is an ongoing challenge for very many brands, especially within FMCG, because you have got these behemoth retailers plus Amazon wanting a big say and a big share of what happened. So that's still the key thing. How we navigate through that, we need a lot of help from our agencies to be super creative, to be patient, to understand the model, to not be afraid to stand up in front of numbers guys, in the case of the last couple of businesses, or the CEO, and really put passion and belief into what they're doing. I think the second thing in terms of challenges is what can we learn as clients who aren't as close to the white heat of development around things like AI. I know it will come up sooner rather than later. It's going to be there today, but how can we learn from agencies? How can you help us? Because generally speaking, in a kind of head office environment, the comms and the agency piece is probably 5 to 10% of the work. How do we get a great understanding of what might work for us, how we might, gain some advantages from it and some competitive advantage, but also, I guess, the trust that this is not going to be something where we're led down a garden path and it actually can add value. And I think there's some, really important things for agencies to think about. There is an opportunity there, but let's make sure it's leading to something that's worthwhile. So they're the two things. The P&L is going to be around for a while, and new advances. How do we keep up when we're just so busy, doing the do and making the business run? They're the biggest things that kind of keep me awake at night.
Brilliant. Tina, do you have anything to add to this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo Adrian's. From what I'm seeing with clients that I'm working both UK and globally, is the budget issue. There's quite a lot of pitches that I've worked on in the last year, and clients, are really keen to invest, but there are other factors that are putting the demands on that budget. So I would, echo what Adrian said about working with the clients in terms of making sure that the ROI of the marketing effort does work, but also probably be a bit cautious and work with your clients about trying to, ring fence the money they're talking to you about, especially I think for next year and what those plans are. And I think the other thing is I know I've always said it about an oversupply market. It's just that cut through, I think, for agency is hard. It's, an agent will probably cover it later about how do you stay top of mind. I had a meeting with an agency yesterday. So that pitch you did, we would have been great for it. I thought, yeah, you would have been. It wasn't one of Adrian's, but it just wasn't that agency wasn't top of mind because I had 30 others on the long list to begin with. So that's my other second point is I think, for agencies, what's facing clients is a multitude of choice and everyone can do everything. So I would say, stay true to what you do. So yeah, budgets, how to manage and make budgets effective, I think is facing clients, as well as managing the agency supply base. Do we consolidate? Do we rationalise? And how do we get the best suppliers to fit the task we've got going forward?
And that is something that we will come to later on in sort of actually learnings that you've had in time. But Tina, other things to add sort of from a marketing agent's perspective. You talked about AI, Adrian, but actually what are the sort of key things that you're looking for to sort of help you stay ahead of the curve? So you talked about sort of actually just insights or anything that can give you that competitive advantage or bring value to help you navigate your way through the sort of the complexities you're in. What other things, what sort of key areas, and how do you want agencies to approach you around?
So for agencies to stay ahead of the curve, and I think to deliver the best results, we said for clients, is stay relevant. So really embrace data as clients are doing that. So really utilize the insights that you're getting. So be it if you're working in the retail sector or you're working in the pharmaceutical sector, really leverage any sort of data analytics and marketing technology to really gain insight for that client in terms of consumer behaviour. So I think stay relevant by doing things like today. So I think learning, going to conferences, keep up to date what is out there in the marketplace, workshops, webinars, etc. So I think learning, I think collaborative client relationships, it's working, and I know we get slated for procurement not liking the word partnership, but I do think it is having those strong collaborative, relationships with people like Adrian. But I understand, and I think a lot of agencies lose sight of, well, what are the client's goals? What are their challenges? And what are the industry needs? What are the competitors doing? So I think having those client relationships, I think really looking at content, and I know I say this as well, and I did a LinkedIn post last week about actually looking at your own website, and actually making sure it's up to date. Please do not have hello at content. I commented last week, didn't I, on someone's David Mikey's LinkedIn post. It's like, and I've just started, I literally 6 holding companies last week I had to get for client. I thought, I think I know 3 global people. Honestly, the other 3, and these are the global holding companies, there was no email address. I was like, I think it's so-and-so. And I was quite shocked. So I think really, and look at your SEO and SEM in terms of your own website. So that's the main things I would say about how to sort of stay ahead of the curve. And also, I think the environment and ethics and stuff like that. I'm not, but they're obviously rising up the client's agenda in terms of ways of working, etc. So really make sure you're covering sort of the D&I, ethical marketing practices and things like ESG as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And Adrian, do you have anything to add around that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, back in olden days, brand building was important, and then data measurement became important. Now it's both. It absolutely is both, and I would, be mindful that, yes, we're in pictures at the moment, and I know some of the folk that we're working with are on this call, but be mindful that great creative is always really, really important, but what's it laddering up to in terms of what the consumer is going to do differently? Getting closer to that sort of purchase intent from research, understanding how a market mix model might play out, and in FMCG, where it's been notoriously hard to measure that sort of thing, it's becoming easier as we get into things like BVOD and linking with customer data and club card, etc., etc. It is becoming easier. So just be mindful of those sorts of things, that everybody is looking for measurement, and I think we're being tasked to understand more keenly than ever, predict what the ROI will be, and then measure, make it so, kind of Star Trek language. That those things have probably been never more prevalent than they are at the moment.
Brilliant. And Tina, I'm going to come back to you now. So in terms of working with procurement, and I know agencies have this notorious fear of procurement, and it's sort of, actually sometimes there have been bad procurement practices in the past, but I think the work you're doing is amazing and actually really driving it forward. And when we're working with you on Compag to help start to make those changes relevant, how can agencies really work with procurement consultants to actually support the whole ecosystem?
I mean, as we know, there are some bad practices, be it 365 payment terms and RFIs asked for, for your mother's inside leg measurement, etc. So, but I think the main thing.
Didn't we take that one out?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I left it in.
Thought we did.
To come, isn't it? No.
But agencies get so wound up about it. I'm like, well, if that gives you a clue. If procurement consultants, you ask them that level of detail, that could be giving you a sign of what that client's going to be like. But on the positive side, I think the main thing is to understand procurement's objectives, and why they're doing the process they're doing. So, is it a cost-driven exercise? Is it supply rationalisation exercise? So I always say to agencies, even if there isn't a procurement person in the room and that initial approach, ask. And a lot of agencies are like, oh, I don't want to ask, but I think it's always worth asking to say, have you got procurement? Because there is nothing worse. There's an old Tom Fishburne cartoon that I use in some of my presentations. Is the agency and the clients done the deal, and I've had a similar for a client in the States in the last few weeks. They did the deal, the agency got appointed, and it's like, can you go and talk to procurement? Because the agency's like, get stuffed. We sort of done the deal and sort of stuff like that, and it was a very, very tricky negotiation. So I think take the time, and the fact that everyone is on the call today to listen to Adrian and myself, you are taking the time. So I think understand, communicate. I'm always a big fan of communicate. So I really think, and I know sometimes it's tricky. Procurement say the answer is no, don't reply, don't tell us this. But I always think try and have clear and transparent communication. Learn to negotiate. I think that's it is an art, and you are faced with people that are trained negotiators investing. I mean, Scott Works is is expensive, but invest in some negotiation skills, because I think that is really key. And also I think agencies undersell themselves, so I think they are managing often third-party costs, and probably are negotiating with that photographer, that printer, and getting costs down and not telling the client. So your agencies are getting pressure on the fees. Whereas actually, if you obviously sometimes look at a budget, be it media or influencer programs, etc., a lot of the costs could be third-party costs. And if you've negotiated someone down or got extended rights, tell the client. And I think agencies, sort of allow themselves to be beaten up on the fee, but actually done a really good job on, say, third-party costs as well. So so I think continuous improvement as well. So always working on ways of working and reporting. So looking at having quarterly meetings with procurement. So it's not just about the pitch. It's not just for life or whatever that dog's trusting is. It's then involving procurement on a regular basis as well.
And so that's brilliant. Thank you, Tina. And Adrian, so your working relationships from a client and procurement, how do you work together to really look and bring that P&L into line?
Well, an example I can give you is from Scholl. We had a need for a creative agency to work across a number of markets, and it was multidisciplinary and multi-channel, and we had to really think about how we wanted to approach it. It wasn't just the obvious way of saying, let's get someone in and look at gross profit, net margin, whatever, and work from there. It was a case of really having experts in the field of 3 or 4 areas, because it was quite complicated. So we worked with Tina in terms of the kind of, I suppose, the RFI and value side of things. We worked with oyster catchers in terms of running the pitch. And then we worked with MCA in terms of, making sure we had the most efficient production solution, which had to be across many languages with lots of regs. So really quite complicated, probably more than one person or internal indirects procurement people can do. And I would say, unless you've got a really, really big Unilever, Mars business, the indirects, internal procurement person is very much a generalist. They aren't going to know a huge amount about the sort of, I was about to say dark arts, but you know what I mean, the special nature of our markets, both in terms of creative design, media, whatever it might be. There's not that understanding. So we need to rely on people like Tina to make sure that we are getting the right result. But I think what someone like Tina brings is a really good partnership approach, where she kind of helps. There's a discussion, there might be a suggestion of a route, and she will help to sort of find a good solution, as opposed to say, look, no, you can't do that, think again. That's probably not the way you would want to work it. So that collaboration is really important. Similarly with Murphy Cobb, there are so many things that they look into on a daily basis that one, production person in an agency would never know about. And I think on a couple of occasions it's been like, oh, aha moment. It's not about, we'll find if you're trying to hide something. It's actually, did you know, actually, if you did it this way, it could work better for all, in terms of the way you're set up, the production company set up, and what the client's looking for. You could do it quicker, and maybe there might be a bit of a trim as well. But those sorts of things, if the procurement person has the trust and respect and is willing to work collaboratively, I think everyone can learn. There's a huge amount of learning for us as clients. I picked up so much from Tina and the two other intermediaries I've spoken of. But I know that when we work with people like Iris and Perfect Storm in previous pitches, they said, look, there's some really good stuff here that actually it will really sharpen our pitch process or creative process in the future, which is brilliant.
And that's what we want, isn't it? We all want to learn and improve. And actually, as you say, these MCA, I know MCA from the past, they're experts at bringing support and advice and efficiency. So actually, you are at the end of the day, everyone wins.
Yes.
And actually, now sort of moving this on into terms of the nuts and bolts of new business. Adrian, how do you go about actually finding the right agencies? When you're sort of finding out about agencies, what sort of approaches have worked? What sort of things that have sparked interest in this agency, etc.? Just so you start to sort of share that insight and wisdom, because I know you get inundated with, probably thousands of sort of connections, probably on a monthly basis, and it's actually what cuts through for you.
I think there's some really good new business departments out there, Paddy. Since I started at Hovis 2 months ago, everyone's noticed he's just started. He's kind of fresh meat. So I do get a few. Some are good, some not so good. Some do clog up the inbox, but I don't mind that. I know it's kind of rules of the game. In terms of the right agency partners, I think there's probably 3 rules for me, and these probably aren't exactly wow moments. They're going to be kind of common sense. First one's good people that you've worked with before. It's probably not what everyone wants to hear here, but if you had some good plumbing work at home, would you go somewhere else? If it's been the right sort of price and done the job. That's kind of the mentality behind that. I think also sometimes good work. So when I was at Scholl, I went around because we wanted to go from, like, as I say, kind of medicines, first aid, into well-being. So I spoke to quite a few agencies who had really good well-being clients, or had taken people from dusty into more, productive, emotive territory. Most of them didn't want to work with us, actually, funnily enough. But the sentiment was there to look for those sorts of people. It was at a time when everyone was really busy post-pandemic, and no one had any kind of capacity, just bad timing. But and then good recommendations from people you trust, and that's where you kind of have people like Tina or oyster catchers, to say, look, this is you're never going to look at the whole market. There are hundreds and hundreds of agencies. School reports, from Campaign or Marketing Week, I forget which one it's in, is only like the top 75. There could be a real couple of gems out there who are really up and coming and really are hungry. So I think there's a number of different things, and then once you get into the meat of it, around the pitch, it's really around, for me, the creative idea is still the winner. I've talked about measurement and data. I thought I'd get it out there, but nothing beats a great idea, and it's always a pleasure to see we are still buying ideas, okay, but it needs to have the backup of that validation and the understanding that how the agency from whichever discipline can help your business. Clearly, it's like, can we work? Chemistry is important. Can we work together? I really want to see the agency team on pitch day playing a part. I feel a bit worried sometimes if they don't. And I know from an agency point of view, it's a case of, well, actually, we've got our best presenters. These people are less, they're less experienced. And I know it's a dilemma, but please try to, because I think it just imbues that trust that there's some really good people here who can handle tough situations, which probably will happen in the course of our relationship. How do they handle presenting to a CEO and a marketing director? That's really important, rather than just flicking the slides, which can happen quite a bit. And of course, the value element's really important. Understanding, are we getting a fair price? Are we, we want good work, we want it for the right kind of price. And that's the kind of order of things I look at, and if it's very close on all three, then you've got a real problem, but a nice problem to have, which we did with in our Scholl pitch 2 years ago, where we had 3 people pitching who were all outstanding. It was like an A+, an A, and A-. It's like, what do you do? Really, really hard. So that's where you want to be as a client. And I'm just really respectful of the time and effort that people put into pitches, because I know it's a huge wrench. I know that a lot of time it's unpaid, and I know that people are feeling that they're giving away their ideas before they get any money, and I accept all that. But it is it is something I really respect people doing, and the time that people put in. And the night before, I wouldn't like to dream about what's been going on and whether they've been to sleep or not, because that can happen, as we know.
I've been on pitches, actually run pitches. I think it was for Skoda, and it goes back to the account executive was the best person in the room. The rest were all half asleep because they'd been up till 4 a.m. trying to finish the deck off.
Oh, no.
That's what I found out afterwards. But it was actually the account executive handled all the questions really well, and it just shows. And then there's been other pitches where the MD didn't let anyone else speak, and that was on Coca-Cola pitch, and he just took over and shut everyone down. And Coca-Cola walked away going, "Who is that guy?" And that was actually Tina at Grey. So it just shows that it's really hard, and sometimes agency having the right team in place is really important. And
Paddy, just to add to that point, I mean that's kind of happened recently with when I was in the room, and you can just see the look on people's faces when they are like overridden, and you think, is this the sort of place where these people are empowered to do the right thing for you, or do they have to go through this one person? It makes a big difference. Understand that really says a huge amount for culture of a business. And you kind of want people to be empowered to do things for you. Obviously you need to get sign off, but when there's that domination, that's not really that healthy, and it's probably what a lot of clients aren't looking for.
Yeah, don't bring anybody into I know we're talking about pitches, but don't bring anybody to the room who's not going to talk. And it's great, as you said. Sometimes it's good to see that the junior people, the creative pitches and the creative team that come up with the idea, come along, but just don't bring anybody in the room that's not going to. And also, from my point of view, because I'm quite, I like measurement of time, keep to time as well. And technology, make sure the technology works. But you never, they come in and like 5 minutes to go and the technology's not working. So keep to time as well. I know we've done a side on pitches, but also I want to put Adrian that point you said last week, which really resonated with me, because I've always said to agencies, oh yeah, if you've got an idea, speculatively send it through without a pitch. But you said you actually don't like that, do you? Because again, you're respectful of people's time, and actually they'd come to you with an idea. And I saw on LinkedIn this morning that some agency had looked at someone's social media feed and sort of publicly has said, hey, brand X, you've got some 3 errors here, look at this. And I thought, well, that's quite brave to do.
It is, and I think it depends on the client as well. If they want, because often clients go, we want brave thinking, and actually then they go back to what they know. And
well, no, but it's Adrian's point about being speculative, isn't it? And I've always thought people like Adrian would like an email saying, we've had a look at Hovis work and X, but I think last week, Adrian, you were saying, please.
Yeah, I just feel it's a bit. I mean, I know it's a good tactic, saying we can do something for free, or I've done a report for you, let's put some time in the diary. I just feel that's quite tough on the people, and I think it's kind of designed a little bit to think the client owes you something, which and you're always in that mindset when you sit down with the people. And I think for me personally, it's not something that works so well, because there's a lot of work that's gone in that probably could have been put into another client that would have grown the business, whereas for me it's probably not going to. But you're right, Paddy, some people might lap that up. It's not personally for me.
Brilliant. And actually, moving this on, what puts you off agencies? And we had some really interesting conversations last week around this, and you talked about sort of experience at Scholl, and Tina, you talked about a recent experience as well. So what are the things that sort of drives you away from actually engaging with agencies?
Who do you want to go first, me?
Yes, please, Tina.
Yeah. Well, the obvious one is lack of engagement with procurement. It's like there's a classic story of talking to someone in a media agency. I mean, this is quite a few years ago, but the client was sponsoring the FA Cup, procurement guy was in the box, whatever it is, the client box, and the head of media guy said to the procurement guy, yeah, go back to buying pencils, and walked out. And this guy's like really senior in the industry now, and actually they called a pitch. It was massive. It was absolutely massive at the time. So yeah, I think that does obviously put me off in terms of dissing procurement. And say, as we said at the very start, Paddy, not everyone's perfect, but actually just trying to be sort of positive about the role. I've been working it 30 years. We're nothing new. So that I think misaligned values and ethics, I think that's always quite interesting. And when you're sort of casting an agency list, for example, understanding the client and understanding where the agency sort of fits in there. Overemphasis on awards, quite a contentious issue, and I do appreciate they are motivational for staff, but agencies that perhaps concentrate too much on awards. Lack of contact details on the website in trying to, who do we get to talk to? And Adrian's got a good story about following up with somebody, a proactive lead, and it took a month whatever to come back to them, which and I've had sort of few of that as well. Inflexibility, I think this day and age, obviously I did that thing for the drum 3-4 years, probably 4 or 5 years about different agency models, and I think sometimes agencies, that does put me off for too inflexible. Well, this is our one approach. It's like, well, the client's looking for this, a bit of that, and everything, because everything is completely shape shifting these days in terms of agency models. So I think agencies are unwilling to adapt to an organisation's way of working, or overly rigid, and high turnover of staff as well. And things like pitches, where you want the key individuals, people in the room to work on the work as well. And I think lack of proactivity. You want agencies, certainly not doing loads and loads of work, but I think the main thing is, procurement have a view on agencies. They talk and we swap notes, etc. And if you get a reputation for being, I have more agencies that say no. Just did the Primark pitch. There's a well-known big agency that just sold to a holding company that said no. Actually, I admire them for saying no. So I think I like strong agencies, but it's being respectful and working with procurement teams to get a good result for everybody. So that's the client, the agencies, and procurement.
Thank you, Tina. Adrian, do you want to add to?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I think generally speaking, most agencies I've worked with have been brilliant. If I'm honest with you, I think the job is really hard. To try and second guess what the client wants, and to pull it all together in the business at the right time, I think is a superhuman effort every single time it happens. So I think generally speaking, I'm a huge fan. I think I mentioned one before, when you've got kind of autocratic behavior that you can see, that's just not great. I wouldn't like to work in that environment, and I'm sure some people haven't enjoyed that type of environment. Tina alluded to an example where I mentioned 3 goods earlier on, and I had a good recommendation and I saw some good work, and I reached out through a hello at email and I didn't hear anything back for about 2 weeks, and then I actually found a new business person, LinkedIn. So I was really trying, this is probably above and beyond what someone would normally do. I wouldn't do it without the recommendation for sure. I got an email back saying, actually, I've moved on, but I'd recommend another company than this one. And then 4 weeks later, I got an email from the company I originally contacted 6 weeks later saying, I'm sorry it's taken a bit of time to come back to you. When do you want to discuss your, of course, 6 weeks is a long time. We kind of moved on. So that definitely was an example of not how not to do it. It was over summer. Obviously, someone left, but that seems to be, a really key warm prospect kind of way into the business that hadn't been looked at for 4 or 5 weeks, which seemed a massive miss.
Yeah, and I think we also talked, it's so true, that hello at is so frustrating at times, because it's one of the things I always talk to agencies about, which is just put a name. It gives a personality, and you can actually know who you're talking to, rather than as a client you're reaching out to someone who you don't actually know who they are at the other end. And it just makes the conversation colder at the very beginning. But I think we also talked about sort of actually being the values of agencies, and actually being true to those and sticking to those values? Because you talked about the previous pitch and an agency saying no, budget wasn't aligned, etc., and then suddenly reaching out with smaller budgets saying, oh, it's a great opportunity, we want to invest into you, etc. And that sort of ingenious sort of feeling you get.
Yeah, no, you're right, Paddy. That was another example. It was part of a previous pitch. It was a decent amount of money. I won't say what it was, but it's a kind of medium-sized budget that a lot of agencies would say, yeah, that's really something I'd love to be involved in, especially when you're talking about an iconic brand that's trying to change itself. And it was kind of, I wouldn't say short shrift, but it wasn't like a lot of interest. But then, moving on to another business, a lot smaller, but maybe with a bigger name, and actually it feels like, oh, this brand has done a lot in the past, and this is probably where they're at. But the past is the past. It's now very different. It's Hovis, it's a kind of different beast to the big mega ads of 12, 15 years ago. Coming back and saying, look, really want to work with you, and I kind of said, look, it's not the same as you might expect, and it's not even the same as a pitch you turned down 18 months ago, and then nothing back. So it was kind of transparent, and someone I know fairly well. So yeah, it didn't leave a great feeling. I mean, I understand I've got a right to sort of talk or not talk, but it would make me think twice about the next time round whether I would want to engage.
Brilliant. And I'm conscious of time, so I've just got one final question before I'm going to open up to the floor. And it's about sort of the biggest opportunities for marketing agencies over the next sort of 12 to 24 months. Adrian, so Tina, I'll come to you.
Well, I hadn't prepped that one, Paddy.
Adrian, I'll come to you then.
Okay. I think there's probably a couple of things. We've touched on both of them, so it's not kind of new news. One is, how do you help? Not just around the brand equity measures that we know, or the return on investment measures that we all kind of know. How do agencies really help businesses understanding and plotting out a code for growth? What's the code around how we deploy the media? What type of execution is going to work? What kind of emotive message does it land, or functional message around the product does it land? There's a huge amount of brands that need a lot of help with that sort of thing, that are kind of fumbling in the dark. And actually, it's a big opportunity, because if they're not fumbling in the dark and you can help them, it could unlock money that could be invested and could come to you at some point in the near future. So have a think about those brands, but have a think about what challenges they have. Are they a PLC? Are they privately owned? Are they PE owned? And pick your fights with those. Do a couple brilliantly. It's a bit like when you're you're looking for work and people say, tailor your CV. It's that kind of stuff. Tailor your CV to that company, tailor your offering, and really go for it in that way. And I think the other thing is about learning. We need some guidance. We don't have the time. We see a huge amount of people in this audience as massive experts that we can learn from. I think it's a really, really good new business tool as well, because again, like as a marketeer, I always say with things like social media, probably back in the day, but a little bit still, walk alongside people, start the relationship, and then get permission to have a more deeper relationship. And that really helps. If I can get access to really great, Q&A panels, even a report, it is really, really helpful for me. But also, I feel a sense of value towards that agency more than sort of make an appointment with me for half an hour next week and I'll show you my dam, which happens quite a lot. Takes a bit of prepping and understanding, and obviously a bit of work, and maybe a bit of investment in the source data. But that, for me, really can't be beaten. And I would feel really that's where I would feel obliged to sort of say that this person knows my consumer really well. He's understanding the strategy. He's shown me some really good insight, points of inspiration. Actually, I'd love to work with him or her. And that for me would be a really important tool for any new business and agency to have.
I think from my point of view, it's, as I said, I think earlier, is be relevant. Be it using data, be it using tech. You know, obviously we've touched on AI. There are some search and selection platforms coming out that are based on AI. So I think just be relevant. You know, keep ahead of the marketplace. You know, it is an oversupply marketplace, and I know it's hard for a lot of the small to medium agencies that are on this call, but just know what's going on. And I find a lot of agencies don't, and not plugged into the wider community. So, you know, get the free emails from the Drum, you know, campaign. You don't have to subscribe at £400, £500, but just keep up to date. Even if you look at the headlines, and I do think agencies, I do think, are too introspective, and you know, people like the IPA, I think, don't help that. I think they're very inward looking, much more than clients are. So I think be relevant, have that outside focus, embrace technology. You know, it's not going to go away. It's like, you know, when Accenture bought Carmel, oh my God, the consultants taken over. It hasn't happened. So, you know, I mean, I've been to 2 talks by 2 top 10, 20 creative agencies in the last 6 weeks about AI and procurement, specifically focused on procurement. And obviously, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I have my Tina Tells every Friday, which is top 4 articles. So that's one way of keeping relevant in terms of what the marketing procurement view is. So I think, yeah, be relevant is my biggest thing, I think, for the next 18 to 20 months, and invest a bit of money. And also, people buy from people.
Yeah.
You know, those personalities, you know, and it's just staying top of mind.
I think actually we also talked about the need for facilitation and and sharing, and it's not necessarily your own content, but it's actually bringing that sort of other people's content relevant to your challenges that they know about. So I think that sort of finishes this off. I'm going to open up the floor. So thank you both, Tina and Adrian. It's been really, really useful and really insightful. Abraham, do you want to just unmute yourself? Because I know you've asked a question twice, so I just thought.
Sorry, yeah. It's mainly for Tina. I know you mentioned about ring-fencing budgets. I just want to know if you had any tips on how to actually do that, because I've come up with a few barriers in terms of contracts being agreed, but then they've obviously diverted the budgets in the last second.
I think it's very hard, you know, for an agency to have a view on that, because obviously it's down to the client, isn't it? So I think obviously all you can do from an agency point of view is prove the work, you know, that the investment is worth it, to work alongside. I think, as Adrian was saying, work alongside your client to say, look, this fee, this budget, etc., we know it's going to work. I think a lot of agencies forget about the ROI, forget about this work is worth it because we know we're going to generate X sales, increase the brand share by X, increase our visibility by Y. So I think it's very hard for an agency to help a client ring fence it. But I think, Abraham, I would work with them to say, this is why you need to invest, because the return is X.
Well, saying that, on all of our proposals, we do provide a guaranteed ROI on all of our influence marketing campaigns. So that's part of the mantra. So if we don't actually hit those metrics, you get your money back after a 3-month campaign is actually warranted. So again, it's something our USP does, but unfortunately, that's just not been the case when we tried to actually get it over the line. But no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, I want to bring you in because that's a great question around D&I, and actually I know that's impacting on big business as well, which is the diversity agenda. But Kathy Hill.
Hey there. Hi there. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Tina. Yeah, we're a question that you kind of touched on earlier, Tina. So have you seen a shift to client / procurement teams specifically tasked with diversifying the client roster, underlying that we're a women-owned, women-led small agency, and we signed up to WeConnect, so the women-owned platform, and we've been approached quite a number of times over the last 18 months, which is fantastic. And it's just be interesting to know if you're seeing that shift, is that high on the agenda, because we're feeling very encouraged by that, and it'd be good to hear from you guys.
From a procurement point of view, if you're in the States, yes, it's absolutely massive, absolutely above everything else in the States. In UK and Europe, to a lesser extent, I think sustainability is probably higher, but diversity is definitely on there, and they are both on the increase, but nowhere near what it is in the States. I mean, the trade body in the States have whole rosters of, because they've got things like veterans and stuff like that. So I think hang in there, Kathy. I think it is coming. But I think in definitely in Europe, I'm seeing sustainability is probably slightly higher in terms of a scoring sheet. But it's definitely, when you do pitches, and I'm on a panel next week and it's 4 blokes, and I've made a comment. It's like, okay, so it is there. It might not be on the score sheet, but it will be as part of the commentary to say, okay, this is what we should be. And obviously, there are some brands it's more important than others. So I think it is there, and I think it will start to increase.
Yeah, it's fantastic actually, because it's the big businesses that are approaching us, which are, the large FMCGs, the Diageos of this world, the Johnson & Johnsons. And we're a UK business, so it for us it's just really encouraging to see it happening. So yeah, great. Open the floodgates, we say. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'd like to bring you onto this next. This is probably for you, Adrian.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for a great conversation. I guess this is a kind of a stickler for most agencies, I think, between creative and strategy, where creative guys are like, the idea is going to win the pitch, but actually everything here has been about collaboration, return on investment, the importance of data, but actually pitch times are getting shorter. So we have to be smarter, nail the strategy, and nail the creative. So do you see that dynamic changing in the pitch process a little bit, so that the focus on planning is weighted higher than actually nailing the creative in final presentations? With a view I think it's kind of both, really, because I think from a procurement perspective, there's a tick box that Tina will see and then develop a point of view versus the emotional pull of a creative execution that might appeal to you, Adrian.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I ultimately we're buying great work. That hasn't changed. I think what has changed is the lens on the understanding of what it will do for us has got stronger. We at the moment we are in the midst of a pitch, and it's kind of fascinating to see what the people in the pitch will come back with. The idea and how we can get more consumers that we need buying the brand will always override everything in my eyes. If there are two equal ideas, though, then you look at other things, probably the chemistry and the cost. But I'm not saying, I don't think creative. I know I've kind of mentioned lots of data and measurement, and people who know me be thinking, Adrian, what's happened to you? You used to be the creative, heart not head. But the world has changed, and you have to kind of change with it. Even people like me, as I said, brand builder, but have become running a startup more around the data. But now it's both, and I think that's the challenge for all of us, really. We are almost being asked to prove it's going to work. Quite difficult to do. Prove it's going to work before it's run, and no one can do that. But those sort of demands are there because in some industries it's much easier to predict the outcome than others. In ours, FMCG, it's more tricky. The previous one I worked in was a mixture of online and retail, where it was a bit easier. But if you're fully online, you've got a lot of algorithms and AI that can really help you. We just haven't got that yet in FMCG. But for me, we're buying work. We're still buying work. The strategy has to lead up to it, of course. If it's like all of a sudden a shopkeeper appeared, kind of thing. It's got to have a laddering up from the brief and the insight. But the creative is still king, in my opinion.
It's funny because our creative founder always says, unless I'm really excited to jump in a cab and go and present these ideas, we're not winning the pitch. And It's true,
Yeah.
and that's that gut instinct from our side, as well as client procurement and everything else. And even if the idea isn't solid in terms of final, you can get the passion and see where that's laddering up to. Going back to your earlier point, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll remember
Thanks,
that pitch that we're working on at the moment.
Fantastic. I think we've got just time for one more question. I'm going to bring Mark Terry Lush in for you, Tina. I think this is a procurement question.
Hello, Tina. Thank you very much to all of you for your insights today. You talked earlier about how procurement will reach out to agencies, but can we flip this on its head? And could you give us some advice, particularly to a smaller or medium-sized agency like we are, and how do we get on a procurement list for future RFPs? I find it quite challenging to track down procurement people who cover, say, marketing services, let alone then try and find a LinkedIn, let alone find an email. And if I do get hold of that gold dust, then I often find that my message goes unanswered. And what is it that you want to hear if we can get hold of you that it isn't spammy?
That's a big old question, Mark. I think if you're targeting bigger companies, look on their websites, because a lot of them have procurement portals to register. So I know a lot of the retailers do, for example. So it's always down the bottom of the page when you want that sort of corporate website, and look for procurement, purchasing, supplier. And what you can do is you can often pre-register. So you can fill in who you are, what your specialism is. And then when they go to do a tender requirement, because it's just about hitting it at the right time, isn't it? And you send 8 messages, not just to procurement, but to marketing. And actually it's the 9th time when, procurement person has had a call, with the internal stakeholders, I need to pitch for X. So I would say the answer is the same bit for any stakeholder, not just procurement. But my big advice, if you're looking at big clients, is to go on their corporate website and register. I think on your own website, Mark, have you got something that you're procurement friendly? So I've got a NED position with an agency, and actually they're looking at a procurement section of their own website, be it FAQs or sort of stuff like that. So, because procurement, years ago when I started in buying, I'd have Kelly's directory. I'll probably give my age away now, but a big yellow book where you'd go through. But obviously the internet is a big, World Wide Web now. So I think have something on your website, and also make sure your own website is easy to find. If someone is putting in, Manchester-based B2B agency specialising in, paintings or something. I think obviously you're doing exactly right. I think it's the same approach whether it's procurement or marketing. It is always going to be difficult. You can't just ring up people, and it is just off the door. But make sure when you do approach them, I think it's the biggest issue, make sure your approach and your content is relevant to, be it procurement, be it marketing, or whatever stakeholder you're engaging with. But there's no big list of procurement people, and I think it's a case of building up a dialogue. If you've got a relationship with one, can they recommend you to someone else, for example, and producing content that probably is procurement friendly and using that language.
Okay, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tina. That is all we have time for. So Adrian, Tina, thank you so much for your time. It's been, I think, informative, fantastic, and actually I think there's been some really useful insights that come from it. So thank you very much. There will be some key takeaways we'll be following up with, and the recording will be shared later, probably tomorrow morning sometime, and it will be posted on our YouTube page. Before we go, there is just one couple of house notices. We have next week, on next Thursday, on the 21st of September, we have the UK Independent Agencies Conference. It's a fantastic event. We've got some really great speakers coming along. So it is in the link you can see in the chat just now. Please do have a look at the speakers, and do sign up. It is definitely worthwhile. It's at the Curzon Soho for the morning, and it's a great networking event, and there's some great speakers. So please do come along. The next BD Club is on the 1st of November, and we're going to be actually taking this conversation further to talk about the nurturing and how do we nurture clients and build relationships with them, have that ability to walk beside them on the pavement, which Adrian talks about. So please do register for that. That will be coming. Information will be coming later on this next month or so. That's all we have time for. So thank you very much for your time, Adrian and Tina, and everyone else have a great day.